Her fingertips brushed mine, just briefly, as she reached past me for the sugar. I should have stepped aside. I should have moved. But I didn't. I froze, pulse quickening at the quiet electricity that bloomed between us. She didn't pull away right away. Just let her fingers rest there, against mine, soft and warm, before lifting her hand like nothing had happened. "You always make it just a little too sweet," she said, stirring her tea without looking up. I watched the steam rise between us, pretending not to notice how close we stood. Pretending I hadn't memorized the way she tilted her head when she smiled. Pretending this was still innocent. It wasn't. I first saw her the day I signed my lease. The apartment was modest, a second-floor unit in an old triplex tucked on a quiet street just outside of the city. It had chipped paint on the railings, floorboards that creaked in protest, and a strange humming sound in the pipes that no one seemed able to fix. But it was mine. After 4 years of couch surfing, house shares, and living out of a duffel bag, I was finally on my own. It felt like something close to freedom. I was 26, just out of grad school, working freelance in film editing, doing odd jobs while trying to land something real. My life felt like a draft, always changing, always in revision. Nothing stable, nothing final. She lived downstairs. I met her the way you meet most neighbors, through the sound of something falling. A book maybe, or a vase. Whatever it was, it crashed hard enough to make me flinch. I stepped out onto the landing, and there she was, standing barefoot in the hallway, holding what looked like a broken glass swan in one hand and a dish towel in the other. Her eyes met mine with a kind of composed embarrassment. "Sorry," she said. "Didn't mean to cause a scene." She had dark hair pulled back in a loose knot, the kind that looks casual but takes effort. Her voice was low, almost amused, like the world rarely surprised her. She wore jeans and a navy shirt with the sleeves rolled, collar slightly open. Her presence filled the hallway, not in a loud way, but like gravity does, quiet and unrelenting. "No worries," I said, probably too fast. "Just checking if you were okay." She smiled. "Glass swan didn't make it. I'll survive." I nodded, half smiling, then backed toward my door like an idiot. She lingered a second longer, watching me. Just watching. "I'm Nora," she said. "Adam. Nice to meet you, Adam. If I drop anything else, I'll try to keep it under a decibel that doesn't sound like murder." Appreciated. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. Over the next few days, I kept seeing her. At odd hours, watering plants on the shared porch, sorting through mail, carrying groceries. She always moved with purpose, but never in a rush. There was a kind of steadiness about her that made everything else feel louder by comparison. And she never wore headphones. Never stared at her phone. She was present in a way most people forgot how to be. It didn't take long to learn the basics. She was a photographer, mostly interiors and lifestyle shoots for magazines. Worked from home, traveled sometimes. Mid-40s, I guessed. Divorced, judging by the single name on her mailbox and the absence of any male voices through the walls. She was polite, but not eager. Friendly, but reserved. We didn't talk much at first, just the usual neighborly stuff. Trash day, noise complaints, weather. Still, every time we crossed paths, something in me straightened up. I'd catch myself brushing my hair before stepping outside, choosing shirts that fit better, cleaning dishes more often because I knew she could see my kitchen through the shared window. It wasn't anything. It wasn't supposed to be. Until the night it rained. It was late, past midnight. I was editing footage for a client, headphones on, when the power flickered, then cut out completely. Dead silence. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the door to check the breaker box, and nearly ran into her at the bottom of the stairs. She was holding a candle in one hand and a mug in the other. "Let me guess," she said. "You're the guy who left the hallway light on." I swear it wasn't me. She smiled, then held out the mug. "You want some tea?" I was just about to make a new pot. I hesitated. "It's just tea, Adam." But her voice made it feel like more than that. And I said yes. Her apartment smelled like orange peel and something faintly floral. Jasmine maybe, or bergamot. The lights were still out, candles flickering on the countertops and casting soft shadows against the walls. I stood there awkwardly in the doorway while she moved about the kitchen like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "Sit," she said, gesturing toward the small breakfast nook by the window. "It'll just take a second." I nodded, taking the chair nearest the wall, hands folded in my lap like I was back in school. I told myself it was just tea, just neighbors riding out a power outage. But my pulse said otherwise. She moved with that same quiet grace I'd noticed the first day, like everything she did was intentional. No wasted motion. The kettle, the leaves, the cups, each step its own little ritual. When she finally sat down across from me, her gaze met mine like she was still deciding who I really was. "So what do you do?" she asked. "Video editing. Mostly freelance right now." She nodded. "That explains the odd hours." "I could say the same," I offered. She smirked. "Photography. Deadlines don't keep office hours." We fell into easy conversation from there. It wasn't small talk, not really. She asked real questions, listened in a way most people didn't. She had a way of pausing before she spoke, as if weighing each word. I found myself wanting to fill the space, to earn her attention, to prove I wasn't just another aimless guy floating between gigs. At some point, she asked about my family. I hesitated. "My mom passed a few years back. My dad and I, we don't talk much." Her expression shifted. Not pity, not the performative kind. Just something softer. "That's hard," she said quietly. "Losing someone, and then losing someone else who's still alive." I looked at her, surprised by how precisely she'd said it. Like she knew exactly what that felt like. She looked down into her cup for a moment. "My ex and I divorced 6 years ago. No kids. Just two people who got tired of trying to be the version of themselves they promised each other." I didn't ask for more. She didn't offer. The rain thickened outside, soft against the windows. She stood up to light another candle, and for a second, her silhouette caught in the glow, elegant, private, the curve of her shoulder visible through the loose knit of her sweater. I looked away too quickly, and then cursed myself for looking at all. "I always forget how quiet it gets without electricity," she said, coming back to the table. "It's kind of nice," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. She smiled. "You strike me as someone who likes silence." I shrugged. Not sure if I like it, or if I just got used to it. She didn't answer, just studied me for a long moment. Then she stood and reached for the cupboard. "You ever play gin rummy by candlelight?" I blinked. "Can't say I have." "You're about to," she said, setting the deck between us. And just like that, the night stretched on. We played cards by flickering light, traded stories, laughed more than I thought we would. She beat me 3 games to 2 and looked quietly smug about it. By the time the lights blinked back on around 2 a.m., something between us had changed. I stood to go, mug empty, cards scattered across the table like evidence of a secret. She walked me to the door, bare feet silent on the hardwood. "Thanks for the tea," I said. "Thanks for the company." I hesitated before stepping out. There was a pause, a breath, when neither of us moved. Just stood there in that too quiet hallway. Then she said, "Good night, Adam." And I left. But I didn't sleep. After that night, something shifted, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet corners of my day. I started listening for her footsteps on the stairs, for the sound of her kettle in the morning. I started noticing when her lights were on late, or when they weren't on at all. Our paths crossed more often on the porch, by the mailboxes. In the narrow hallway, we both learned to linger in just a second longer than needed. She'd knock on my door sometimes, asking if I had extra batteries or if I could help move a stool. I always said yes. Always dropped what I was doing. And sometimes she'd ask me to stay for tea again. Never coffee. Always tea. One Sunday morning, I found her sitting outside on the shared porch. Barefoot, in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair loose and messy. She had a book open on her lap but wasn't reading it. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. She looked up, squinting slightly in the soft light. I could've. Just didn't want to be indoors. I sat down on the step beside her, not too close. The early air was cool and the world felt paused somehow. "Sometimes I wonder," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "if solitude's just a quieter kind of longing." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just looked out at the street with her. Eventually, she stood. "I'm making something light. You want to join?" We had breakfast in her kitchen, soft eggs, fresh greens, toast with fig jam. We didn't talk much. It didn't feel like we needed to. I was aware of everything, how she moved around the stove, the way her sleeve brushed mine when she passed the jam, the calm in her eyes when they met mine across the table. That afternoon, she asked if I could help her with something in her studio. She rarely let me into that room. It was in the back, sunlit and quiet, filled with light and wood and the faint smell of old books. Her camera was set on a tripod by the window, and prints were clipped to a wire across the wall, portraits of interiors, subtle and human, like the rooms had stories to tell. "Would you mind sitting for a light test?" she asked, already adjusting her settings. I hesitated. "You want me in the frame?" She looked at me, serious. "I want you to sit." So I did. I sat on the bench by the window while she adjusted the light, moved around me silently, occasionally glancing into the viewfinder, occasionally just watching me. You're not used to being looked at, she said. No, I admitted. You should let yourself be seen more often. The way she said it, soft, intent, made something in me still. When she was done, I stood to leave, unsure what to do with my hands, unsure how long to hold her gaze. She moved past me to set her camera down, her shoulder brushing mine in the small space. Neither of us apologized. You're different when you're quiet, she said. I turned. How so? Still, but not empty. That night, back in my own apartment, I kept thinking about that room. That light. The way her fingers had steadied the lens when I wasn't even moving. The way her eyes didn't flinch from mine. Something was growing in the silence between us. Not loud, not fast, but steady, dense. And I wasn't sure what would happen when it finally found a name. It was a Thursday when she left a note at my door. Nothing poetic, just a small square of paper folded twice and slipped under the frame. If you have a minute, I could use your eyes on something. In. I knocked once. She opened the door immediately, like she'd been waiting just on the other side. Inside, the lights were low. Afternoon sun drifted lazily through her curtains, turning everything gold. Come, she said softly, turning without explanation. We walked to the studio. The same room, the same warmth. But this time, something was different. Laid out on the work table were half a dozen prints. One of them was me, seated in that same bench by the window, the light catching half my face, the other half dissolving into shadow. She stood beside me, arms crossed lightly, gaze locked on the image. I didn't mean to keep it, she said. I just didn't delete it. I didn't answer. I was staring too hard at the photo, at the version of myself I didn't recognize. I wanted to show you, she added, because it felt honest, and because I wanted to know what you see when you look at it. I didn't know what to say, so I told the truth. I looked like someone trying not to say something. She gave the smallest nod. Exactly. The room felt smaller then, like the walls had moved in. She stepped closer, not dramatically, just enough to blur the line between familiarity and something else. I don't let people in here, she said. Not even friends. I'm not just a neighbor, I said. It came out before I could think. She met my eyes, unflinching. No, you're not. We didn't touch. Not yet. But the silence that followed carried weight, like both of us were standing at the edge of a very slow, very deliberate unraveling. I should get back, I said, voice low, careful. She nodded once. Of course. But as I turned, her voice caught me. Adam. I paused. Would it be all right if I photographed you again? My throat was dry. Yeah, it'd be all right. That weekend, I didn't see her much. But Sunday night, just as I was brushing my teeth and preparing for another routine week, she texted. Tomorrow morning, if you're free, bring your coffee. I showed up at 9, cup in hand, heart too loud. She opened the door in a long cardigan, hair unbrushed, barefoot as always. No pretense, no performance. She didn't say much. Just led me to the studio, gestured to the same seat. I sat. She took her time. No directions. No forced poses. Just the soft click of the shutter, the occasional shift in angle, the quiet of the morning holding everything still. After a while, she lowered the camera and looked at me, not through the lens, but directly. Her voice came soft, like it had been waiting all morning. Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be someone else with everyone? I hesitated. All the time. She nodded like she knew. Then, barely audible, except with you. And that was it. The moment passed. She picked up her camera again, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling, even long after I left. We didn't speak for 3 days. Not because anything was wrong, but because nothing needed to be said. It was the kind of quiet that hums underneath everything else. A current that doesn't stop just because you step out of the water. I busied myself with edits, deadlines, distractions. I told myself I needed the space, that whatever was forming between us had started to distort the shape of my days. I wasn't sleeping well. I kept catching myself looking at the ceiling at night, wondering what she was doing just a floor beneath. On Thursday evening, I found her outside on the porch again. She didn't look surprised when I joined her, just shifted slightly to make room. Neither of us said anything for a while, just sat there listening to the wind and the far-off thrum of traffic. You disappeared, she said finally. I looked down at the steps. I didn't mean to. She nodded, not accusing, just acknowledging. I thought maybe I'd pushed something too far. I turned to her, surprised. You didn't. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes were steady, open, stripped of all pretense. Then why did you pull back? I took a breath, because I started forgetting where the line was. Silence. Then, you're not the only one. The confession was simple, clean, but the weight of it landed like a book dropped in water, slowly sinking. She stood after that, brushing off her hands. "I made soup," she said. "There's too much. You should eat." So I followed her inside. The kitchen was dim, warm, the scent of rosemary and garlic soft in the air. She poured 2 bowls, set them on the table like we'd done this 100 times before. Halfway through eating, she said, "You don't need to worry. I'm not expecting anything from you." "I know," I said. "But I think about it too," she added, eyes still on her spoon. I didn't answer. My stomach felt tight. That night, I helped her wash the dishes. I stood beside her at the sink, rinsing slowly, hands damp, voice quiet. "I never asked," I said. "Why did you get divorced?" She dried a bowl and paused. "Because he stopped seeing me." I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Not just physically," she added. "In every way. He stopped paying attention to the person I was becoming. And I stopped trying to show her to him." Her voice didn't shake. It was calm, resolved. "He was kind, mostly. But kind isn't the same as present." I turned off the faucet, let the silence settle. When I looked at her again, she was studying me the way she did through her camera, like I was something uncertain, waiting to be understood. "I see you," I said, without meaning to. Her breath caught. She set the towel down gently, then stepped back. "Don't say that," she said quietly. "Why not?" "Because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it." Neither did I. I left without touching her, without saying anything else. But when I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop hearing her voice. "I see you." She believed me. And that scared us both more than anything. It was raining again the next night. Not the kind of rain that keeps you inside. The kind that makes you step out anyway, just to feel something on your skin. I don't know what I was expecting when I knocked on her door. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But she opened it with that same calm look, like she knew I'd be standing there eventually. She didn't ask why I'd come. Just stepped aside and let me in. The lights were low. The kettle was already on. She moved through the room like we were mid-conversation from days ago, like no time had passed. "You want the green tea or the chamomile?" she asked, not turning. "Neither," I said. She froze, barely, then turned slowly to face me. I took a breath. "I need to say something," I said. "And I don't want to wait for another quiet moment to sneak it in." She said nothing. "Just watch me. I don't want to ruin what we have. I don't want to cross something we can't uncross. But I also can't keep pretending this isn't happening. That I don't see you every time I close my eyes. That you don't shift the shape of my days." Her mouth parted slightly. Her hands were still. I stepped closer. Not touching. Not asking for anything. Just near enough to feel the weight of the moment. "You make me feel like I'm not invisible," I said. And I don't think I realized how much I needed that. Her eyes shone, but no tears fell. She blinked slowly, lips pressed together like she was holding back something fragile. Then, finally, she said, "I've been pretending too." A long silence. "I keep telling myself I'm just lonely," she said. "That this connection isn't real, that it's just timing or proximity or some unspoken ache we've both been carrying." She looked up at me. "But I think it's real. And I think that scares the hell out of me." We stood there, the rain whispering against the windows. No music. No candlelight. Just the hush of honesty filling the space between us. Then she stepped forward. Slowly. Carefully. And took my hand. Not like a lover. Not like someone giving in. But like someone finally choosing to be seen. Her hand was warm. Steady. And she didn't let go. I didn't kiss her. We didn't fall into bed or speak in metaphors. We just stood there, palms pressed together, quiet and human. "I don't know where this goes," she whispered. "Neither do I said. "But I'm here." And that was enough. That night, we sat together in silence, curled on opposite ends of her couch. Her feet were tucked beneath her, a blanket over her legs. My hand rested on the cushion between us, inches from hers. She fell asleep with her head resting on the back of the couch, breath soft and even. And I stayed awake beside her, not because I was restless, but because I finally felt still. There would be consequences. Conversations. Lines to keep and lines to cross. But in that moment, none of it mattered. We weren't young and reckless. We weren't desperate or foolish. We were two people who had learned to live with silence, and were just beginning to believe they didn't have to anymore.